like the fact that you was an hour late. It actually wasn't a problem because I've started a new thing before I go away next month. I've decided to learn one word or two phrases per day of Thai. So when you weren't here, I was actually just practicing my Thai phrases. So I'm up to about 8 phrases now. So I'm pretty sharp, I'd say.
Hit me with them. Hit me with them.
Okay, I can say how much, how right, how much, please. Then I can also say hello. Have you eaten today? Which is a cultural difference, but it essentially means how are you doing? Which is ging kao yang krop, check bin krop, check please. Aroe ma, that's delicious. What else can I say? My one krop, no sugar, please. No. I'm trying to learn phrases that I
No, I
use
got
a
you.
lot
That
when
you're
I'm
actually
out
gonna
there.
use, yeah.
Yeah, so I instead of just trying to learn directions and things that you would learn in GCSE French class, I've been trying to actually learn things which are a bit more applicable. I won't bore you with all of them, but I've been learning a few. I'm getting there. I'm hoping by the time I go away, I can have at least 30, which I'll be quite happy with.
I have to say,
because
it's not a language that rolls off the tongue, is it? It's not one of
I
those
don't know. I
very
don't think it's too
rough to
bad
say.
actually. Yeah, I don't think it's too bad. I can't roll my R's, so they roll their R's a lot. Even like Oroema, which I'm not that great at rolling my R's, so it's a little bit difficult. But I kind of like. I don't know what it is about Thailand, but I always like being able to speak to the locals in a little bit of dialect. I like the culture. I like the food. I like chatting to the people. So if I can be a little bit clued up and less touristy, I always like to learn a few phrases, and I'm going to be creating a lot of content out there. So if I can sort of keep things smooth with people, then it will put me on a good foot, I think. So that's what I've been up to. How about yourself?
Yeah. Honestly, pretty standard week for me. I can't lie. I almost wish there was something incredibly exciting. Actually, there is something I can talk about. I got an email from a company, and I brought this up. I'm gonna try to remember not to say the R's and ums because that's something to work on as well. But I got an email from a company that suggested about courses, which is obviously what we were talking about the other week, and they basically were proposing the idea of suggesting making courses around my script writing and documentary creation with a 15% profit share essentially on their part. So that was interesting. I haven't responded to him yet, but I wanted to get your 2 cents. I was actually going to ask you this off the podcast, but I was like, you know what, it'd probably be quite a good topic of discussion. So, well, I guess I'm seeking some sort of advice. I don't really know. It's a bit foreign to me.
Give me a little more context. So this is a company that does what essentially?
They basically do all of the logistical side of things. They help. Obviously, I plan the course with them, but they help structure it and run it alongside me, so I don't have to do it all by myself essentially. But I'm not jumping at the gun for it. I'll put it that way. Not yet, anyway.
So they help you plan a curriculum?
Yeah.
And then they host it, or is it a third party hosting software?
That I don't know. I'm not sure. Again, they said if we could get on a call and talk more, for discussion, but I'm not like 100% on it, to be honest.
Do they specialize in just script writing, or is it just courses in general?
Well, it was tailored to me. They were talking about, so it was to do with MMA documentaries in particular, more so around that rather than just script writing. So that I do take I don't take for granted. Like I appreciate that because you get a lot of mostly just scam emails, but even some of the ones that aren't, they clearly aren't catering just for you. They're sending out a lot of these emails en masse, and they're not catering towards your actual vision at all. So when you do get emails from brands and companies that want to work with you that clearly do at least try to sound like they're making an interest in what you're doing, it goes a long way. At least not for me personally. I don't know if that's the same for you. But it's an interesting opportunity. But I will say as well, I did hear back from the company who are helping me localize all my content. The channels are up. They are not running though just yet because they are experimenting with multi speakers and stuff. Because obviously in a lot of my videos, there's multiple speakers, different voices. So they're trying to get different AI voices to work, with their software on that front with my videos. But they're aiming to go live this week, which is good to hear. I think they've got 5 channels, or 5 channels set up, which is pretty mad, but pretty cool. So that's exciting. That's finally getting up and running. So it's more been a week of just down to business. Do you know what I mean? One of those. Not necessarily any major movements, but a lot of ideas and stuff being finalized. It's exciting. But as terms of the script writing and localizations stuff, obviously they're 2 different fronts. But of course, I don't know. I have to wait and see. That's how I feel about it at the moment.
Firstly, for anyone listening that doesn't understand the context of that, it's essentially you want to translate your content into different territories, whether that be Russian, Spanish, etc., etc. Coming back to the course, do they help with the marketing, or is it just literally the logistics?
Honestly, I've had an introductory email, so it's
okay.
rudimentary at the moment.
Because I would say, what I personally done. Again, I don't have all the context, so I can't give you any clear-cut sort of information. But if anyone's listening to this, and for anything really, if you're creating an online educational piece, if you're creating a course, if you're creating, quite honestly, anything really, what I done was I went back and forth quite frequently with ChatGPT to refine and basically tell them what I wanted to do. What they obviously have all of the context of my brand and things because I've had so many conversations with them before, so I don't have to explain too much. But I gave them all of the context of what I do, what I want to give in regards to a course and whatnot. And then I used obviously my expertise and then bounced it off them to sort of find a structure or a sort of a formula, if you like, of how to create a course. And then I took bits that I liked, left bits that I didn't, and I just kept asking them questions and prompt and then refined it and then extrapolated lots of different pieces from lots of different answers and then squished it together. That's what I personally done. So that's always something that you can consider. So if it's just a case of helping you get a structure to it, I think you could do that by yourself and not worry about the 15%.
Yeah, that was my thoughts as well. I was like looking at what they were, obviously the initial ideas they were proposing. I was like, this is nothing I couldn't do. Like with the localization stuff, in terms of multi-channel content, that is stuff I could do, but it also is a huge time sink. It's nothing too difficult.
True.
It takes up a lot of time. So that's why I saw the benefit in that. But for a script writing, course, probably that's where I would go towards because that's my main passion with the video creation, at least. Yeah, not as much appeal. But again, maybe a change of heart. It's something as I did say to you on an episode a couple of weeks ago, I did say that's something I wanted to do. So we'll see. It's a wait and see rather than no for me at the moment.
I landed back from Budapest.
I was going to ask this. Yeah, where were you? Yeah, I was going to ask you. You said you landed back, but you never said where. I was like, where's this guy been? I was confused. I thought you maybe landed somewhere else. Rather than you never said you were going to Budapest.
I kind of forget to tell people these details, and then they ask me questions, and I say, "Oh, I'll be in the country tomorrow, and whatnot." And it's not that I'm some crazy jet setter. I just don't tend to have those conversations. I don't even know why. I just keep my head down and get on with things. But yeah, I booked for myself and my mum to go to Budapest for her Christmas present. I knew that she always wanted to go to the spas there, so I booked that, and that's where we went this weekend. So I spent the last couple of days. So in regards to my content whilst away, it was just a case of I spent an extra sort of maybe 5 hours a couple of days before just creating and curating all my content so I can have it. I usually do this anyway, but in lighter terms. I should do this more often. But obviously a lot of the work that I do sometimes is it's sometimes more time sensitive in regards to news that's coming in, cycles and whatnot. So I can do that to a certain extent, but not always 100%, because I do have to be slightly reactionary. But I was still creating content here and there. But I wanted to make sure that I was 100% present for the entire trip and not be on my phone, not replying to people, not doing anything like that. So
It's difficult to
before I
do.
went, yeah, it is, but I've got to a point now where I've been in that position quite a few times, so I know how to do it quite well. So like I said, I batch completed a ton of content. I had 24, 25, 30 TikToks drafted in my draft, so I could just literally go in and click post, all the music, captions, headers, everything filmed, done, edited, done. So I could just post. So that was all done. Same with the Instagram, and then I just done a little post here and there. But I pretty much stayed off my phone the entire weekend, which I was happy about. And then I landed, and as I landed, boom, I went straight off of airplane mode as the wheels hit the tarmac. I'm not even joking. As soon as the wheels hit the tarmac, I went straight off of airplane mode and I just went boom, straight onto UFC Fight Pass because Molly was obviously fighting and I really did
Oh,
not
so you got to
want
see
to
it?
miss that. So I did
Yeah,
get
yeah,
to
of
see
course
that.
you did,
I
yeah.
landed and I was on the Blake Builder fight, which was actually way earlier than I anticipated. So I was actually about 3 fights before her, which I guess is a nice little segue into the fight card.
There you
So
go. Very
let's
nice.
get your takes on it. What sort of jumped out of the page to you? Or let's just start with Molly first and foremost
That's
because
where
we
I
don't
was
care
gonna
about the
say.
rest.
That
Let's
was
just
what
start with
jumped
Molly.
out to me.
Yeah,
That was
let's
definitely what
start with
jumped out
Molly.
to me. I was gonna say we don't get a lot of mounted armbar finishes anyway, and to see it from somebody like Molly, who's obviously gone through the hardship she has, and obviously had her grappling pedigree tested and questioned by a lot of people. So to see that kind of submission from her is so impressive. You know, mountain arm bars, they're a bit of a dying art because of the risk versus reward you get from them. Because if you mess up an arm bar from mount, you're giving your opponent the dominant position. So most fighters don't tend to go for it. Gunnar Nelson, I think, was the last one who pulled one off. I'm probably wrong there, but there hasn't been that many at all. But I thought it was beautiful. It was a beautiful submission, and not just that, but what led all the way up to it. It was, you know, she said it in a post-fight interview. I can't remember where, that it was mixed martial arts. You know, she used pretty much every facet of the game that was possible: knees, elbows, punches, kicks, and of course her submission game. And you know, there will be people talking about her opponent caliber. You know, she's a can. I don't really want to hear it. You know, these fighters put everything into it, and you of all people will know how much Molly's been working towards this, and you know the mental struggles she's had to face. So I was very impressed. I was very happy, and I was very impressed.
There's a few. Well, there's not a few. There's more than a few things I want to touch on here. But the first thing you have to remember is that was a rematch for Deanna Belbita. So she's coming into that with every fiber of her being wanting that win back, just as any fighter does that's lost to someone before. They will do anything to get that. So despite the fact that she sort of had her toe into retirement or whatnot, she would have been preparing very hard for that and wanted that fight. I think just touching upon what you said there in regards to the mounted armbar, I think what was so impressive about that was not even just the finish, it was more so the craftiness and the ring IQ, because I heard her corner tell her when it was 3 minutes, she was in mount, she was landing devastating elbows, and then she went for that when she knew that there was little to no time for her to be in a bad
It's a very good
position
point, actually.
and
Yeah,
that she could jump upon it. Because she heard the clap, she heard the clap of the 10 seconds. She was still landing elbows for 4 seconds, got about 4 elbows in, and then when she knew that there was no time for her to get in a disadvantageous position, she snatched up the arm in a very unorthodox fashion, and she pulled it on so tightly, she literally snapped her arm, or at least popped it, and she looked in a very, very uncomfortable way. But you 100% hit the nail on the head, because that was, honestly, it was a quite flawless performance. I think so many fighters speak about sometimes how they've never replicated their true potential in a fight. But I think that was probably as close to it as Molly's going to come. We always know she's had good boxing. She showed that off. She showed her ability to punch into the into the pocket because she does have the shortest reach in the UFC. That's a fun fact. Punch
Yeah, I
into the
know.
pocket and let her offense go. We even saw the spinning elbow, but it wasn't just thrown for the sake of it. It was set up against the cage. It was set up with frames. And then we saw takedowns. We saw a good array of takedowns. We even saw a slam. Then we saw her slide into mount and take full control. Then land elbows. Then land a submission. So it was just chaining together all these mixed martial arts. And what you said there, spending a little bit of time with her a couple of times, you really do get to see the impact that not just for her, but for so many fighters that just get inundated with abuse and trolls and just horrible messages constantly about their job ultimately. And she was in a dark place. And I remember saying to her when I met her for the Polaris event and I went and filmed there, I said, after she won, I said, regardless of whether you won or lost, I think the fact that you had the mentality to go into a realm where everyone said that you were weak and where you recently just faced adversity, go onto a UFC fight pass and go on in front of millions, quite literally in front of the screen, and bear all essentially, and put it on the line. And whether you came out victorious or not, I think that was the battle. That was the battle. And we saw her get a very impressive armbar submission there. So the fact that it came full 180, she dropped down the weight class, done it professionally, looked incredible, and then got an armbar submission again, which is where all of this dark cloud came from originally. Yes, it's impressive as a mixed martial artist, but it's the mentality that I just find so admirable, whether it's her or other people in that position, that we really can't truly understand until we get closer to that actual fire, until we see that a little bit closer up. We see the horrible messages. We see how dark those times are for people. We see what impact it has. And then when you sit there and realize the sort of steel that it takes to go through it all, yeah, I was just so impressed. Honestly,
I'll
it
give you
was
a word.
incredible.
I'll give you. You're a wordsmith. I'll give you a word to describe that. Cathartic. It's a good word. I think that describes that situation perfectly.
Cathartic, which means,
I don't know the exact definition, but the way I use it is it's a release, a relief of something, being relieved of something, a burden of epic proportions. That's probably the context that I'd use it in. And
that's a good word to use as well, because yeah, you're spot on. That's exactly what you could see in that performance as well. You could see it in the build-up. People were still commenting on the build-up. She was going in there just with a business mind. It's easy to get caught up in the glitz and the glamour and the applause and the fans and the lights and all of that when things are going so well. And then when things slipped and she saw the other side of that, it was clear that her mindset just shifted to, right, okay, I need to go out and handle business. I don't care about stare downs. I don't care about interviews. I don't care about any of that. I want to go out. I want to show my true potential. And then I can truly enjoy it. And you could see at the end as she just dropped to the canvas, you could see what it meant to her. And I was super happy. Honestly, I haven't been that happy for a win in a very, very long time.
I saw people in comments getting mad at her celebrating. I'm like, she just want to fight. They're like celebrating like she's just won a belt. I'm like, what do you mean? She's celebrating because she just won a fight by a mounted armbar, no less. And it's just MMA fans never cease to amaze / disappoint me. And we've had that conversation. Yeah, you will never win against them. I will say. I'd like to think of us as fairly level-headed compared to some of them, but hey, they aren't the majority representation of the sport. Who else was on that card? I think as a whole card, I wouldn't say it was stellar, but that was a nice highlight. I will say we can just jump into the main event: Imavov versus Roman Dolidze. To be honest, I was more interested in the mid-fight beef with Chris Curtis because that was fun. It's a new one. As a change from the boring Apex fights we're getting these days, it was a nice little switch up mid-fight. Also, actually, yeah, this is something I'll touch on. The refereeing, particularly in the main event and the co-main event, I didn't really understand. I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about. The referees, I don't know if they've decided to take a new new approach to things, but they were very quick to try and separate fighters in grappling exchanges, whether that was against the cage or on the mat. Renato Moicano against Drew Dober was getting a matter of seconds when he was in mount or even in half guard before I think it was Mark Smith was calling for his head, telling him to work. And it was strange. And DC rightfully called it out, so I'll give him some credit there. Strange. I can understand it in a clinch position, but in a dominant position on the ground, you've got to give him time to work, especially if he's looking for a submission. A guy with such great grappling in a submission game like Moicano's, he's going to take his time. He's going to be measured. So to not have that opportunity or have that being taken away from you, which thankfully it didn't, Moicano was able to use his positions pretty well, and that really won him the fight. But it was strange, and I thought it was maybe a one-off, but then Herb Dean started calling for it in the main event, and I was very confused. But what are your thoughts on that?
On the refereeing or the main event?
Yeah, well, both. Hit me with both.
I think with any fight card, you set a precedence on every card, and then you'll see in many, many different scenarios that it stays fairly consistent without the card and not necessarily week on week. So sometimes what you'll see occasions broken up early in a fight card, whether it's against the cage, whether it's on the floor, and then that almost just sets the tone. And even though sometimes it's different refs, obviously it's different fights and whatnot, but you'll often see them sort of stick to that similar tone. And then, of course, you're getting that refereeing multiple fights, so you'll see that more prevalently. So I think that's definitely a factor of it. But it was super weird to watch Moicano in mount landing elbows and then get called for inactivity. It was very, very strange.
Very, very
Coming
strange,
back
yeah.
to the main event, I was glad that they were sort of splitting things up, because I think things did get stale, and I think it's easy to see that situation sometimes in MMA, that stalemate against the cage, because it can happen.
It was the fatigue.
It happens fairly often.
I saw it.
But in just regards to the actual main event, wasn't impressed by Roman Dolidze.
No. He got, I will say that one judge scorecard they gave it as a draw, I really, really cannot understand. I will give him credit for his heart. I think you can't not do that. A guy who's stepping in and getting battered and bruised over 25 minutes and still fighting, fair play to him. But, even with a coach like Eric Nixick, he couldn't seem to just light that fire underneath him. And I don't know. With lack of combinations I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert, because I'm not. I don't claim to be. To me, lack of combinations, lack of fluidity, really, and variety in his shots just looked far too predictable for a guy like Imavov, who clearly came prepared. And I thought Imavov looked pretty impressive. There was a couple of moments where, maybe he probably could have been a bit more predatory, but he got the win. He's a young guy, at least in terms of the fight game. Probably hasn't hit his prime just yet, so plenty of time for him to work. But yeah, Dolidze, not too impressed, and I'm not sure where he goes from here.
I think for Imavov, that probably was the best performance we've seen from him, just because we saw him tested over 5 rounds, which was the big question for me, especially against someone like Dolidze, who did show last night that he is super durable and is well conditioned, as I said going into it. So he did show that. So that was my main sort of concern for Nassourdine Imavov with that fight, was just how was he going to expend his energy. But I think now he's getting a little bit wiser, a little bit more mature. I think he's sort of managing his gas tank a little bit better. So I was impressed with that. He showed some really, really nice striking, some really nice combinations, some really nice sharp shooting. And I think for Dolidze, the reason why he couldn't necessarily get into that rhythm is there was small things that Imavov was doing just to disrupt that flow. He had that little chassé kick, I believe they call it, which is a sort of little hop side kick, just to similar to an oblique kick, which is just disrupts the rhythm every time you enter range. But that was the thing for Dolidze. He just kept hanging out in the wrong range. He was in boxing range against the quicker guys, so he was just getting pieced apart. And then when he did find his way to the clinch, I think because he was getting stung on the feet so often, he didn't quite have the energy to work on his takedowns. And you heard Eric Nixick calling for them. but he kept finding himself in this sort of body lock position against the cage and
Yeah.
couldn't really find any advantages at all. And the thing for me is, again, obviously it's easy to sit here, but when you're in that position, you need options. They spoke about that in a fight previously. It was actually in the Natalia Silva and Araujo fight. Spoke about having options against the cage. When you get your opponent up to that position, you need options. Whether it's to drop the level and get under the butt, whether it's to go to the single leg, whether it's just to work elbows or knees. He wasn't doing any of the above. So there was no small changes in position. There was no offsetting his opponent's balance whatsoever. So it was always going to be difficult for him. So I think we saw him, like you said, quite predictable in the striking. Eric Nixick and Chris Curtis were calling for straight shots. I don't think we saw one of them all night.
He called for the head kick and he threw it once in that round and then never again. So
I think it's a tired thing, right? As well, it's hard to throw head kicks when you're gassed, and more than that as well, it's when you're tired and maybe you're not traditionally the sharpest shooter and your striking isn't your natural background, you revert to bad habits. So you revert to just putting everything into big winding shots and wasn't really getting anywhere with that. So although I was impressed with Imavov, I can't sit here and act like I enjoyed that fight.
No, me neither.
I didn't.
Be dishonest,
really, to be honest. Yeah, I'm not going to lie to you. I respect them for the work they put in, but I'm not going to sit here and act like that was a super enjoyable fight. It wasn't whatsoever, to be perfectly honest. But
I will say, what was enjoyable, it wasn't actually a fight. It was the post-fight interview of Renato Moicano, which, in a case of a victory, which was what unfolded, I think we all knew was going to be entertaining, and he didn't disappoint. Probably the wildest guy in the UFC right now, I have to say. I mean, and it was a weird one because for the first time, this might seem insignificant to a lot of people, but him calling out MMA Guru is quite a big thing. Just on a premise. It is though, isn't it? Like on a premise for us, it is.
It is.
Because, I mean, even particular for me, I mean, obviously my platform is mainly YouTube based. It is quite weird because content creation at MMA, and I've said this before multiple times, that over the last year in particular, MMA content creators, not creation, but creators, individuals rather than groups of peoples and companies, individuals making content around MMA and the UFC has grown massively over the last year, to the point where now we've got a guy like MMA Guru, who by standards of the game is a veteran, probably doing it for about 3-4 years now. I think he's doing way far longer actually, but streaming for about 4 years. He's getting mentioned on live TV by a professional fighter, which is quite wild. So full credit to Guru and Moicano, of course. Both are just, it's a weird one, isn't it? And now they're talking about collaboration and streaming together, which is another step, isn't it? So exciting times for MMA content creators with an RS. I will specify, not Shun, because I will say, if you look on the other end of the spectrum, MMA On Point is a youth channel, one of the biggest channels in the game, and they've been creating MMA videos for a long time, but they don't have a face. They don't have a singular person attached to them. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's the personable side you do get with these individuals creating these talking head videos. So yeah, that was exciting. On top of all the crazy stuff about his father having a kid at 62, which is absolutely batshit, but I don't need to tell you that. And wanting to join the police to kill people, which I think is pretty fitting for a guy like him. But whether they ever allow that, I seriously doubt it, considering I think he's a bit unstable, at least in some capacity. But yeah, he's entertaining.
Why would you have a kid at 62? Why would you have a kid at 62?
I think that's a bit wild.
You might be brown bread when the kid's 6.
He'll be gone, mate. He'll be gone. You'll be out of there.
Doesn't make any sense.
Theo Von's dad was very, very old when he had him. I wish I knew the number, but I don't think he died like when he was 18 or some shit. Maybe I'm wrong there. But yeah, strange one. But credit to Moicano. I thought he looked good, at least on the fight front. He looked pretty good. Disciplined performance, taking down a guy like Drew Dober and being able to keep him there was what surprised me. Was not, it's been a couple of times, I said last week, where he's been caught a few times early on in his career. Fiziev was able to put him away. I believe RDA did as well. I might be wrong there. but he showed it was a good showcase of fight IQ. I think, he neutralized all the most dangerous aspects of Drew Dober's games, which I will specify are very, very dangerous. So credit to him. Yeah, I thought he looked pretty good. It wasn't the most exciting fight, but they never all are.
No. And I think that's what he done a good job with, because of the post-fight press conference, or the post-fight speech, I should say, sorry. You're going to see the W on his record that says Drew Dober. You're going to see the highlights from the speech. And then you're going to sort of forget the performance, because it was somewhat forgettable. Even though it was very impressive, it was somewhat forgettable. So those lines get kind of blurred. And now he puts himself into this conversation with very, very big names. If you get a win over Drew Dober, you're talking the upper echelon of lightweights. And that's the premier division when it comes to name brand value, not necessarily talent. The talent's obviously exceptional, but name brand value. Exactly.
I think being in the top 15 in the lightweight division is a far bigger achievement than most give it credit for. It holds much more merit than being in the top 15 in something like heavyweight or light heavyweight, because there's so many fighters in there, all vying for that spot. So to me, it holds a lot more value. And I think people forget that a lot of the times. They see 15 and they're like, But for lightweight, I think that's extremely impressive. There's so many good contenders in there.
In truth, there's some shallower divisions, don't get me wrong. For example, heavyweight 15 is very different to bantamweight 15. But the thing is with 155 is, it's talented, but more so than that is it's the names that come along with the fights when you're in the top 15 and the top 10. Everyone's a big name. You're looking at the Dan Hookers, you're looking at the Dustin Poiriers, you're looking at the Benil Dariushs, even though he's not even as big of a star as some of these guys. And then you go right to the top, you're with the Gages, the Islams, biggest names in the sport bar none, the Conor McGregors. So he really sort of enters himself in this conversation where, you're looking at a Dan Hooker, you're looking at a Benil Dariush, you're looking
that's
at
a fun one, isn't it?
fights for Moicano now. Yeah, Moicano wants
money fights, dare I say it.
Moicano wants money, and the fact that he said, "I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna impregnate my wife, and we're gonna get Money Moicano free." I was like, you actually call each child Money Moicano is hilarious.
Legendary. I mean, he knows he's playing the game, though, isn't he? He's playing the game, and he put a tweet out to Conor McGregor saying he used to dislike him, and now he respects him, what he's done for the sport. And you can clearly see he's playing that game. He's following that route of entertainment, because realistically, whether we want to admit it or not, that is what the game is. It's an entertainment game first over actual fighting. That's really how MMA is in 2024. So I don't blame him, and I think he's doing a great job of it, because he really does kind of have that authenticity. Obviously, he's playing up to it, similar to the way that Strickland plays up to it, but he's still staying true to himself, for better or for worse. At its core, exactly. So yeah, I can't help but like him in a way. As wild as he is, it's fun and it's different, and it makes a stupid ass Apex Center fight night that's a little bit more entertaining, and for me, that is a positive. And speaking of boring Apex fight nights, we've got another one next week. But at least the main event is good, at least on paper. Jack Hermansson versus Joe Pyfer, very fun. I think that's the real big step up for Joe Pyfer he's finally getting, who is really one of the hottest talents in the middleweight division right now. You're making a gesture. Is that just for focus, or you got something to say? Which one is it?
I was just focusing.
Well, I'll let you say your piece. I'll let you go for it. I'll let you say your piece anyway. That's your chance. On Joe Pyfer.
I was just focusing my camera, but regardless, Joe Pyfer, Jack Hermansson. Jack Hermansson has been there, he's done it, he's got the t-shirt, he's been in the rankings for God knows how many years, which is just super impressive as it is. Just to get in the rankings, just to win in the UFC is difficult. To get in the rankings is another thing. But to be in them for however long, super impressive. Not the greatest striker, but a good mixed martial artist, good grappler, got many different submissions, just good conditioning. You know he's always going to be game. You know he's always going to be there. I think Joe Pyfer's just the new breed. I think he's the next.
He is, yeah, for sure.
I really do. If you go and look at what he can do on the mats in regards to his grappling, his wrestling, his jiu-jitsu, it's very, very good and very dangerous. and then you pair that with the fact that this man hits harder than flipping Francis Ngannou, we've got a real problem on our hands.
Crazy.
We've got a real problem on our hands because this man packs
Putting
a
it lightly,
punch.
to be honest.
Yeah, he packs a punch, and I've been saying this for a minute actually. Since I saw him on Dana White's, he does have that thing about him. He does have that je ne sais quoi, and he
The
does
aura.
have that. Yeah, he does have an aura about him.
That's
He
that's a
does.
word people are using recently in sport. Does someone have an aura or not? You either have it or you don't. That's just one of those things. And Joe Pfeiffer definitely has an aura. I will
You can't
concede.
fabricate that. You cannot
No.
fabricate that because you can't manufacture it. You either have it or you don't. And Joe Pfeiffer 100% has it. And you start looking at the middleweight division and you start looking at his skill set. He hasn't fought the level of opponent that he needs to be in the conversation of titles and top fives yet. But if he ticks off a Jack Hermansson, who's not an easy night out, most certainly not.
He's right
I'm
in
not
there.
saying he's going to. We're starting to have very real conversations about Joe Pfeiffer because then you start looking at your path to victory. Okay, do you trade with him? That's not a good idea. It's not really a good idea. It's like, okay, can we grapple him? Can't really do that much. It's like, it's a bit sticky. It's a bit sticky, and this man's in a team
He is a bit
where
crafty though, Hermansson. I would just quickly say
he is.
dangerous sort of flash submission grappler. You know, he's got. I mean, he's got some submission wins over some big names. I mean, he beat Kelvin Gastelum with, I think it was a heel hook, maybe 3 years ago, something like that. And that's a guy like Kelvin Gastelum who's hard to submit, and we've talked about that a lot. Obviously, mainly due to his giant neck, so that's probably why Hermansson went for the leg. But still, it's an impressive win,
Dorito,
and
man.
he's all little Dorito man. But he's as you said, he's seen it all, and he knows the game. And generally speaking, it is a tale of the hungry up-and-comer versus the vet, and usually it's the former that wins. And that's what I think is going to happen on Saturday. But you can't rule him out. You never can. It's MMA, and I've always been a fan of Jack Hermansson, so I'm sort of half rooting for him in this one. But I do want to see Joe Pfeiffer, get that step up and keep going because I think it's going to be a big year for him. I think realistically, with a win over Hermansson, you're talking. Is it crazy to say 2-3 wins for a title? I don't think that's that crazy.
I think if it's standing, I think Jack Hermansson is going to get a little bit uncomfortable just with the power because anyone will get uncomfortable with the power because he's so devastating and he does have nice fundamentals coming from Philadelphia, coming from a good team, working with really, really good guys every day like Sean Brady on the grappling mats. Then you've got the boxing pedigree that comes from that area. And then I think he's going to get a little uncomfortable on the feet. And if he does get a little hurt, and if he does get a little compromised and he looks to grapple, and if he does jump on something opportunistically, like you said, like a leg, I think that's going to be terrible for him because you start putting yourself in bad positions against someone like Joe Pfeiffer. I think he can knock you out anywhere. So I think one hammer fist when you're on bottom or you're rolling for a leg lock or something along those lines, I think can be devastating. I just really struggle to see a path to victory for Jack Hermansson over 5 rounds. However, we've never seen Joe Pfeiffer go 5 rounds, so that question's always there. But in all honesty, I can't see it going past 2 rounds without Joe Pfeiffer getting a knockout.
I can see a guillotine. I think guillotine off a Hermansson takedown, or maybe like a sort of a power guillotine or like a Bravo choke, Das Anaconda, something like that off a failed takedown attempt. I could definitely see that. Sort of a panic shot.
I think he's going to knock him out. I think he's going to knock him out. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I don't think it matters. I think he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. I think he's going to have something to prove. I think he has the biggest name ever. I don't think Jack's going to be able to take him down. I think he's going to be too strong. I think his hips are just not going to be there for him. And then I just think he keeps it standing and knocks him out. I really don't see it going any
I think
other
one thing
way.
we can agree on is he's not going to wait around. He's not going to wait around at all. He's going to go for it. Absolutely. Yeah. It's going to be a dangerous one for Manson, I have to say. But hey, you never know. As I said, it's MMA. But the co-main event, to be honest, I'm more excited for. You said it was a pretty meh card. I don't think it's too bad if you ask me. I think Dan Ige versus Andre Fili is just banger written all over it. But to be honest, that goes for any Dan Ige fight. I think we can both agree. And I like Andre Fili. Obviously, had a good performance over Nathaniel Wood. Didn't get the win, but had him look very compromised in multiple situations. So that's a testament to his striking ability, and he's been in the game for a long time. And so is Dan. They're both, both seasoned fighters in the UFC. For me, it's just a difference of power. I think Dan,
Mm.
I'd almost want to classify him not as a gatekeeper, but just below that threshold. Do you know what I mean? He's just below that sort of gatekeeper status. Where he always bounces back with a nice win over a sort of guy who's maybe gaining some forward momentum in the division. And the power does help him. Power helps him a lot, and I think it's going to help him again here. I can see I can see an early finish for Dan. To be honest, I see that right hand landing. I see a 50K bonus for 50K. Dan Ige. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bold shout because Andre Fili sort of. I listened to him most recently on a podcast speak about how he's coming out with this new mindset of recent where he wasn't necessarily complacent, but he'd been in the UFC for a long time. He sort of woke up and it was just part and parcel of his life at this point. And there was no sort of excitement. There was no sort of additional energy. And he's been at this for the longest time at the highest level, at the best training camps. So with the best team, with the alpha male boys, obviously. So it's just interesting to sort of see where he's at. He's obviously taking this on short notice, and Dan Ige's never an easy buzz and take it on short notice. So I really do think it's going to be a boxing match. Yeah, I think it's going to be a boxing match just in 4-ounce gloves. I can't really see them grapple too much, but Andre Fili's just so flipping crafty. But then again, Dan Ige is as well. And I don't know. I think this is going to be a very, very close fight. Yeah, I think it's going to be a close fight. I think Andre Fili might just edge it. I think he's going to have a slight more diversity in his attacks with his kicking game a little bit more than Dan Ige will. And I think he'll be able to stay safe from the power of Dan. I think he's just, at this point, he's a veteran and he knows how to get through fights. He knows how to sort of avoid those killer blows, if that makes sense. So I'm going to back Andre Fili, but it's a flipping close fight. Make no mistake. It really is.
Yeah, there's some other fun ones in here. I'm sorry. The more I look at this, even on the prelims, I'm starting to disagree with you here.
Tell me a fight that's exciting you on the prelims.
Oh shit! I just clicked off it. Hang on, bear with me. Oh no, sorry. It literally just looped around. I thought Petrosian was on the prelims for some reason.
Wills,
yeah, Max Griffin, Jeremiah Wells is a banger, but I like Max Griffin fights. Yeah, I'll give you that. Actually, I saw Petrosian on the prelims for some reason, but it was just for some reason the order was wrong there. But that is a fun fight. Arman Petrosian against Rodolfo Vieira. I think that's a fun one. But for me, RoboCop returning against Brad Tavares, that's on the main card. That is a fun one.
Yeah,
you cannot deny me on that one. That is a banger.
One of my favorite fights.
RoboCop fight is a fun one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, was it in his last fight he got? I mean, I know he's your favorite fight, but was it in his last fight that he got brutally knocked out by who was it who knocked him out? The big Brazilian guy with gigantic biceps. He fought recently. I can't remember his name. Forgive me for that.
Crazy knockout power. The Hulk.
Yes. Is it Ferreira? Maybe I'm wrong there, but yeah. Was that his last fight? No, he's coming off a win actually against Dennis Chilulian, who also just lost to Christian Leroy Duncan. So yeah, I wouldn't say that's the best win in terms of name value and competition, but it's a win in the win column, and that's momentum to carry forward against a guy in Brad Tavares who has been in the game a long time. So it's a fun one. It's a classic middleweight matchup for me. I'm just gonna go RoboCop because I like him.
I love RoboCop.
Screw the analysis.
I'm done with Apex cards first and foremost. I'm just looking forward to the.
You might be done with them, but the ESPN certainly aren't me. I'll say that. I don't think we're gonna.
I just can't wrap my head around it. It just makes.
We're not
gonna
have a shortage anytime soon. They've got to meet a quota. That's the reality of it. UFC need to meet a quota for the ESPN. Need to have a certain amount of cards per year, certain amount of events, certain amount of this and that. That's just how it is. Yeah, they're cheap. Yeah, they don't cost much to produce.
I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing any of these things. But if I say this time and time again, there's so many logistics. There's so many things that, of course, make more sense for them to do that. Financially, it probably makes more sense. Logistically, it probably makes more sense. 100%. But if you want to be the biggest, the baddest, the ultimate, you have to act that way. And the Premier League isn't holding every flipping Premier League game in Wembley because it's easy. You just can't do things like that. You have to
No.
get in front of crowds. And they do a lot for growing the sport, evolving the sport. You look at the PIs they're opening in Mexico. You have a look at the Shanghai Institute that they've got, the academy that they've got over there, the combines. They do a lot of different things. But just on the very, very basic level of letting fans see the fights every week, it's a no-brainer. I don't think there's any argument. There's no rebuttal to that. You can tell me 100 different things, but ultimately, they could make it work, and they should make it work.
They
We
have made
can't
it
watch
work.
Apex
Obviously,
fights.
maybe not to
Well,
the
they
same
have.
scale. Yeah, but
This is it, right?
obviously less
This is it.
events. That's the change. Is whether they can bring that level of production en masse that they used to. Because obviously, I mean, it wasn't even that long ago. Really, they were doing it. You know, fight nights regularly in different countries to full crowds. Obviously, less events. I'm not going to dispute that. As I said, it's a case of where they can then bring that forward. But I just there's no reason for them to do it, at least on as a
You don't
from a
have to
business
go to
perspective.
different countries, though. You don't have to go to
Yeah, not
different
even different
countries.
countries,
At
just even
least now,
cities
just
in
different
America.
states,
Yeah.
right?
And I will
Just
say,
different
actually, just
states.
as an interesting question, you're saying speaking of different countries, this is usually the time in the year where they announce the London card, and I say London with an asterisk because I think it's probably going to be Manchester. But I'll just propose you the question because honestly, the fights next week I'm not that interested in, but I'm more interested in who do you think would be on a card for that sometime middle of this year?
Two people. Leon Edwards, Tom
Interesting.
Aspinall.
So you're saying for a pay per view? Because I was in my head. I had it's a fight night, but I think you might be bang on the head there, nail on the head there.
You can't make it a fight night anymore.
Oh, it
The
makes sense,
sports,
doesn't it?
you
There's
can't
no way
make
Leon
fight
Bilal
nights
is
in
main
the UK.
eventing 300. They'll do it for 302, 100%. Yeah, because 301's in Brazil, 302, 303 maybe. Leon Edwards Bilal headlining in Manchester. Yeah, 100%. I think they'll do that. It's a good point.
And
Oh, damn, that makes me want to go now.
they'll stack it out with the likes of Christian Leroy Duncan, Jake Hadley. Hopefully Nathaniel will be on there. Paddy, potentially if it's a pay-per-view, they'll probably try and get Paddy on there because
Oh, yeah.
he's had a couple of fights in America, so he's obviously got a name and a brand and a value out there. So there's so much potential to do, and that probably tees it up for a nice sort of timeline for him as well. Probably Molly on, well, hopefully Molly on there for sure as well. That'll
Yeah,
be
it
a good
lines up, doesn't
timeline
it?
for her. Exactly, it makes all the sense in the world, but it has to be a pay-per-view. You can't have two British champions come to England once in the year because it only will be once. If they come in June, they won't come again. Come in June, you can't go, okay, cool, we're coming back here, but the two biggest pound for pound stars, or two of the biggest pound for pound best fighters in the world at the moment, are not on the card. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I think they'll do it in June.
That's a good point. I always had it in my head that it would be a fight night, but I think the more I think about it, yeah, it makes far more sense to be, a pay per view, and that's great. That'll be a third pay per view in the UK and a second in 2 years, which is great. Because obviously we had, I wish I remember the number. I'm gonna guess it. I think it was 206 or 216. Something like that. No, it wouldn't have been 216. 217 was Bisping versus GSP. I think it was 206 was Bisping versus Dan Henderson 2. Was that or 204? Something like that. And that was the first one. And then obviously we had 286 last year. And now, hopefully, if your prediction is correct, we'll have another one. Probably around 302, 303.
Talking about Northerners and opportunities, do you know the brand Flux?
It rings a bell, but I'm not going to pretend I'm knowledgeable.
It's quite a Scouse brand, I believe. I believe it is a Scouse brand. And they work with a lot of different fighters, athletes, boxers, predominantly MMA and boxers, really, is what I've always seen it in. But it is a quite a big activewear brand. And they reached out to me today because they used one of my posts in their thing and sending me some clothing. So
no way. What are they sending you?
Yeah. Clothing.
Do you know?
I don't know.
Is it fight gear or is it like?
Oh, I don't.
Activewear.
No, it's
no idea.
Yeah, it's activewear. It's activewear.
Oh,
so
okay,
it'll be. They do things like tops, tracksuits, shorts. It's mainly just activewear. But the video that I took of Molly and made of Molly, the reel that I made that they used was in all of their gear. So I made
Benefits of the
sure to
game, man.
tag them in it, and then they posted that, and then they kindly said that they would send me out some stuff as well. So that's kind of cool because I always love a bit of free clobber. I say in my
Yeah, you are
free clobber.
you are a close aficionado, I have to say. Yeah, speaking of that, I was going to ask you about this.
I
Where's
just like freebies.
where's your Food Fighters merch? I thought you said you'd be repping that, and I feel like I don't see it enough.
You know why it is? Because it's all t-shirts, and every time I come into the shed, I always wear a jumper just because it's a bit cold.
You got to get the hoodies, mate. You got to start getting on those hoodies.
It's true. The difficult thing is the image that I want to use on one of the particular hoodies is a very complex color code, and I've not found any particular type of printing or any. Yeah, it's a photo
That's
that
interesting.
I took
Yeah,
at one of the events, and it's a very complex color code of red. So it's hard to find the correct printing method to use it because I won't bore you with the logistics, but there's a lot of different printing methods that you can use. Direct to print, you can use obviously embroidery, but too complex. You can use direct to garment, all these different things, right? Back in the day, I actually used to work in a t-shirt factory, so I have a little bit of
you got to unlock, mate.
previous knowledge about that. Terrible job. That was one of the many crappy jobs that I'd done just to earn some cash. But
I'll tell you what I'd like to do. You know those guys at like American football games who shoot t-shirts out of cannons?
Yeah.
That would be great fun. I'd love to do that. I don't know if I doubt there's an actual sole job dedicated to that.
Have you seen the...
I've always wanted to do it.
It's a good point because you say about the Food Fighters thing. I don't publicize it enough. I've got a sick logo for it. You probably haven't even seen the logo, have you?
Yeah, of course I have. Isn't that the one?
You've seen...
it's on the shirts, isn't it? Yeah, of course I've seen it. Yeah,
I
the
don't
double
know
F.
how many times I've worn it. Yeah. It's the kanji, exactly.
It's the kanji, mate. I know.
I love it. I actually look at it.
It's great. I think it's
sick.
great as well.
Yeah, I think it's so sick. I actually do, and that's hand drawn as well. That logo. So the actual logo that's embroidered, there's a hand drawn logo. That's not even lifted off the internet. So yeah, there's a lot of different elements to it. But you are right. I do need to develop that because even more so. Obviously, I'm going away pretty much in a couple of weeks. Really, Jesus Christ. It's
busy
not
man.
really too long until I go, and obviously I'm at Lumpini Stadium March the 8th is when I work at 1FC, so that's just over.
You got to buy a
t-shirt
away. Cannon like off the black market and just bring a shit ton of Food Fighters t-shirts and just get in the crowd, just start shooting them in. Yeah,
I do need to
shoot one into the octagon.
I do need to bring. I think it's a ring.
Oh yeah, of course it'd be a ring, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I think. But I know 1FC have obviously the circle. They have the circle, but I think at Lumpini is the ring. But yeah, that's coming up really fast. And I actually I've been reaching out to quite a few gyms recently, just saying that I'm coming over there. I'm doing some work and whatnot, shooting some content, and I've reached out to this one really, really big gym. And I won't mention it just in case it doesn't come to fruition, but I reached out and just said, essentially, I was going over there and was looking to do work. It's not banged out because I have somewhat of a relationship with a few of the guys there, a few of the coaches there anyway, but it was another big gym. And they said, I've never got asked this actually, weirdly, which is so strange. Of all the messages I've ever sent, barely anyone says, oh, can we see some of your work? Usually because it's going through Instagram. So if they want to look, they can just scroll and whatnot. But I'm glad that they did because my Instagram usually isn't of as much of my work as it should be. I need to get better at actually publicizing the work that I do at events with fighters, photography, all that stuff, which I don't do as much as I should. And it's because my Instagram isn't as much of a priority for me at the moment, but I need to get more on it. Anyway, as I was saying, they said, can you send over some work? So I thought, okay. So I curated loads of different pieces of work that I'd done. So some interviews that I'd done, some photography that I'd done, obviously when I went out to Bangtao. But now I'm in this fortunate position where I've had so many different opportunities that depending on who I'm speaking to, I can send over content within that realm. So they're a Muay Thai gym, obviously, because it's in Thailand. So I sent over when I filmed for Liam Harrison's event, and then I filmed the behind the scenes of Liam Harrison's event, and then I sent
that's
over
the golden ticket right there.
Do you see what I'm saying? So then I sent
Yeah, no,
over the
completely.
photos at Bangtao, and then obviously some interviews and whatnot, just with some bigger names, just for a little bit of social proof. And then all of a sudden, boom, they're like, yeah, cool. And then they essentially, I just thought they were going to say, yeah, sweet, let's do it, like let's team up. But then they said, cool, let us know a little bit sooner to the time, and we'll organise a room for you and whatnot, and accommodation and stuff. So
No
that'll be pretty
way.
sweet. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I wasn't really
Can't go
expecting.
wrong.
Wasn't really expecting that, but yeah, that'll be pretty sick. So I'll have should have accommodation.
It's
at
a
that
knock-on
place and
effect, isn't
whatnot.
it? That's the benefits of the game you get
Mm.
when you've got your what's the phrase I'm looking for?
Leverage.
You're just yeah, something like that. I mean, you're in a lot of different areas. You know, you're prepared.
True. There's a blessing and a curse to it all, right? That's always the
Completely.
argument. There's always a push and a pull. There are so many negatives for me having my fingers in different pies per se in the
That's
MMA
the
space.
phrase.
But there's
That's the
also
one.
benefits to that, and it's what I sort of mentioned on that call. So I spoke about quite a few times. Is you have to sort of understand what is inherent to you, because, for example, someone like MMA Guru that you mentioned before, he said, "Okay, I'm doing YouTube, talking head, reaction live streams, etc., and done only that." So in 3 years, 4 years, of course, he's very good at what he does. So he eventually got to the top anyway. But because his efforts were so concentrated in one thing, you obviously can get to the top of that much, much faster with obviously a lot of hard work, preface to say. But if you take someone like me who's sort of bit sporadic, bit this, bit that, that's a little bit more me, because I like to taste new things, I like to try new things and whatnot, but it does slow things down. But it also opens up different opportunities in different places, in different fields.
I will say that's actually something I've been battling this week. I did say I was doing a lot of reflection on my work and YouTube in particular, and I was thinking of the possibility of launching a talking channel potentially. I don't want to fall into that route of giving the most stupidest hot take ever, saying UFC 300 sucks, just like every other content creator Jerome out there who's creating the same clickbait bullshit saying 300 is a bad card when it quite clearly isn't, and it's one of the best we've ever seen in a long time. But I'd want to do a talking channel where I'm really trying to be I want to be authentic, and I want to just talk off script and without any sort of prerequisites. But I don't want to carry that. I don't want to fall into those pitfalls, pitfalls of a lot of those patterns that a lot of content creators in MMA are falling into right now, of crazy hot takes just for the sake of it. I want to be a bit insightful, and I want my opinion to be a bit more valued. And hopefully that doesn't come across as pretentious. But I don't know if you're catching what I'm saying. Yeah, it's just some ideas that float around. I'm not sure whether I'm going to go through with it, because it is a big time sink, and it would take a lot away from my main channel videos, which I take a lot of pride in and are improving on massively.
There's a very easy way to make sure that doesn't happen.
Hit me with it.
Don't do that.
Don't do it.
No, in regards to, you say I don't want to fall into that, and so don't fall into that.
Don't do the channel. I was like, all right then.
No, I mean, if you don't want to fall into being clickbaity and just saying hyperbolic stuff for the sake of
no, of course,
don't be that person. But like anything, you have to. The thing is with talking head is, when I first got into this space, I really wanted to do that as well, because I just enjoyed just chatting, being quite natural, authentic.
Exactly.
And then after a little while, because obviously I'd seen people like Chael Sonnen, it wasn't really MMA Guru that made me, I didn't really know who that was at the time, to be honest. It was more people like Chael Sonnen seeing him do that, and Dan Hardy's and people like that, right? And it took me a few videos, and they weren't terrible, they definitely weren't great, but it took me a few videos, and I just sort of then realised, oh, no one cares what I have to say. They care what Dan Hardy has to say.
That's what makes it harder. That's what makes it harder.
They care what XYZ has to say. They've got 10, 20, 30 years. Not even, but sometimes just analysts but they've got 10, 20 years of social proof. They've got 10, 20 years of work. So why is someone going to tune into me talking? So there's a few things to that. You have to realize that to build up a brand, it takes a long time. And my question to you would just be, or my question to anyone that's sort of understanding different avenues they may want to go down, is more so, what's your why? That is just a general question. What is your why for content creation?
What, in terms of making a talking channel?
Why do you want to do this? What is the goal?
Well,
What is the overall goal?
I just started talking about
or
the
short
sport.
term?
Do you know what I mean? I don't know. And also, I want
Okay.
to create also partly because I want, obviously, we did the podcast for that, but also because I want to have I don't, something I don't do a good enough job of, and that's mainly just due to the style of content I made. We've talked about this before, is I don't have as much of a personal connection with my
Hmm.
community because my channel doesn't rely on my face. It doesn't need my face. So there's less of a face to the channel, and I kind of want to bring that. Obviously, the live streams I was doing, and I haven't streamed in like a month, which is bad. But um, it's not out of well, it is out of laziness, but also mostly because I'm not sure if it is worth doing. I probably will jump into it, but I don't know. At the moment it's on hold. It's not. It's not.
So you say
I'm not
that
procrastinating it. It's on hold.
to pull you back to that, you say it's not worth doing. Okay, if it's not
Yeah,
worth
it is. I
doing,
know that's not true because it
no, but
is.
my question is to you, it may not be worth doing, but if you're saying it's not worth doing, then there must be this more definitive goal of you deciding why it's not worth it. So what would that be?
I think I just want to try different things. It's like what you said. Do you know what I mean? I want to
Okay.
experiment. I want to see. I'd like to maybe just give it a go and see if I enjoyed it. Plus, it was never something I said this from the start, in way early on in 2022, 2023, really. Starting a talking channel just purely out of a basis of it being such a saturated market now, even more so now, like tenfold. It's a lot harder to break into. So being able to have a channel already that is by some people respected and, you know, admired, I'd be able to translate some of that audience over, and I'd have an easier time of it. So that was my view on it when I was thinking about it recently. But again, not sure. I haven't made my mind up on it completely. We'll have to wait and see. Again, I do want to get back into live streaming. It's like taking that big first step back in is a big one, and it's difficult. There's a mental
If you
thing, and
have
I
a
need to
look
do
at,
it.
I don't think it's difficult at all. You literally just put up a thumbnail and go live. It's not difficult,
I know,
actually. I'll
I
be honest.
know.
I'll be
It's a
honest.
mental
I
thing. It's a
can't
mental
sit. I
block.
can't sit here and
I
lie
don't
and
mean
try and
literally.
fluff it to
I
you.
don't mean
It is
literally. I mean as
easy.
on the mental side of things. I don't know.
I think you're overcomplicating that
Yeah, I
completely.
probably am. That's how my
Definitely
brain's
are.
wired.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
definitely are. I can't sit here and try and even be
yeah.
sympathetic to that.
No,
I
don't.
can't.
Please don't.
I wouldn't. I
I know. I
wouldn't.
know.
I would.
It's a
I
fault.
would
I'm
if it was
aware.
necessary. I would if it was necessary.
It's
But
just a mental
you've done
block,
it.
man. Stupid.
You've done it so many times before. So my thing for that would be to maybe just make it a little bit more sustainable. Do one a week. You got into a rhythm where you was doing quite a few. So just set up one a week, whether that's on a Friday evening or a whatever, a day that you know that you're always just at home at a time, and just do one a week. And you can be for 10 minutes, it can be for 30 minutes. The question why I said to you, what's your why? I didn't mean it to sound super deep, but the
No,
reason
no,
why I said
no.
that is because if your why is to, okay, if your long term is, okay, I want to create a community. I want people to sort of have somewhat of, I know it's a bit ambiguous, but to have somewhat of a respected view when they see my channel and my takes, and I want people to sort of tune in to hear what I have to say, and I can just chat about the sport. There's nothing wrong with any answer, but if that is your true why, then 100% you should start a talking head channel. 100%. However, if your why was, I want to, yes, I want to create a community. Yes, I want to create content, but I really actually want to create as much money as I financially can so I can be financially free sooner, so that I can buy X equipment or travel to Y event or to move out at X age, whatever the goal may be. Then it's going to change the short term, because then I would probably say, well, it will be more of a tired dream to do talking head. You won't be able to, at least for a good few years, even be able to monetize that potentially. So it probably would be better, worth your time, investing more time and effort into the channel that's monetized and that's paying you money. So it's just sort of understanding why you're doing things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's just because I don't. How do I put this?
And there's no right or wrong either.
No, of course there isn't. No, yeah. It's just a case of how I want to allocate my time. As you said, it's about you like to explore different things. I can't allocate my full week to just doing these documentary videos as much as I
You
like
get
making them and I'm
bored.
proud of the end result. Yeah, I get bored. I can't do it. I
Yeah.
can't sit at the editing screen for
That's
that
why
long. I just
I
cannot
don't
do it.
do.
I literally
Yeah,
can't.
that's why I don't do
I
things like
genuinely,
that.
I
Yeah.
just hate myself if I do, and I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. So, so yeah, I want. It's yeah. I guess it's a case of variety. That's probably what I'd say. So, hence why I should get back into streaming. It's kind of a no-brainer because it's a nice change of pace. And as I said, I mentioned so many times about the podcast as well because it's a nice change of pace for both of us, really, to just talk off the cuff for a little bit. So yeah, it's just something to explore. Again, it was only really in passing thought. I wrote it down, as I said. I know you said a lot about writing stuff down, so I started doing that again. Helps a lot with just clarity on things, and yeah, something I might look into exploring. And I did say this year I want to level up like crazy, so that would be something. That would be another big step. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. I think it's just there's two parts to that. It's always like I said, it's always important to understand there's no right or wrong of whatever it is that you want to do or whatever intrigues you. But then it's also making sure that what you're doing at least is aligned to what you're trying to achieve. So if it is a case of,
Good point.
like you said, I'm 100% with you there because I can't do the same thing all week. That's why I hated editing. That's why as soon as I could, I just outsourced it because I just don't enjoy it whatsoever. So it's just about sort of understanding what makes things sustainable for you. So yeah, I think just having to think about that. But yeah, live streaming is always going to be a good outlet for you. And then you can always, the thing is with that as well, is you can always sort of, even just simply, you can always have a few topics that you want to discuss on a live stream and then just have a very neutral background that in post that you can just edit and then have a talking head for 4-minute clip on a particular topic, another topic, and then you can even break up the Q&As that you answer a little bit longer and have talking heads of those, and then even have shorts out of them. So even if you didn't want to
it's
sort of
so much opportunity.
Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah. I
It's
would
all
actually say
there.
I was looking. You're talking about opportunity and how good the power of just reusing your content you already have and just repurposing it. I looked at my view stats the other day. I have a total of over on YouTube 3.1 million views, which is pretty cool. And the crazy thing is, I've only been doing shorts properly for I'd say since like October, so like 3 months. Three and a half months, I'd say about that. If I had to ballpark, maybe 4. Actually, I think it's since November, and my view stats, my views from shorts have just overtaken my long form views already in that short amount of time. And I know views don't hold the same amount of merit on shorts compared to long form videos. But the crazy thing is when you remember they're all from the same pieces of content. It's nothing new. It's from my long form videos, those shorts, and that shows you the power of it. It's pretty crazy. We talked about Opus Clip being an investment in terms of like a financial investment, and it's worth it as a business expense. I think I've made all my money back from YouTube short revenue. Nothing crazy or anything, because YouTube pays
What
absolutely
is the
nothing.
RPM
For
for
me,
YouTube
for
Shorts?
me, it's about 10p. 10p for 1,000 views, so it's pretty standard. If I'm not mistaken, right? That's pretty normal.
That bad.
Yeah, it's pretty normal.
How
I mean,
do
MMA
you
is a
get
niche.
eligible for that?
I think it's just the same as being YouTube monetized, but they have changed the rules on that. So if you
I
wanna,
don't believe
you
it
can get
is.
monetized in 2 different ways. No, there is. It's just you just have to be YouTube monetized, but you need if you wanna, there's different routes to getting it. So you can get 1,000 subscribers and 400 hours of watch time. I know it's actually easier now, but for me, that's how much it was. But to get the same thing through shorts, you need a crazy amount of watch hours and
Yeah.
subscribers. I think something like that. It's the metrics are different, obviously because views and
So if
subscribers
you
are
get
valued differently.
you get a million views on Shorts. That's what, £100? Is that right, or is that bad maths?
Yeah, I'm ballparking. Yeah, I'd say about that. Yeah, I've had to guess.
Is that
Yeah,
right? 10p's 1,000.
yeah.
So
Yeah. £100.
A million would be £100, right? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's not that bad.
It's. I think it's a lot harder to get. I don't know. So I've got one short. My most viewed short is on about 500,000 views. So it's a
Yeah,
bit
so
less.
that's £50.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not too
Yeah,
bad. I mean,
for something that you didn't create
did.
or make,
Yeah. Well,
at least in the back end.
by
On the
extension.
back end,
Yeah.
you
I mean,
didn't do
MMA
anything.
as a niche is not too bad. I'd say it's somewhere middle of the pack in terms of, because obviously different niches have different ranges of profit and RPM. Like tech is massive, but it's saturated. It's not too bad. Like in good months, you can earn good money if your videos are long. Like January pays like shit, and February, just like early months of the year, don't pay very well. So
You always
and
say
even then,
saturated, but I don't think that matters. I don't think that matters.
no, it's saturated
But
because it's harder to stand out. Is what I mean. So it's hard. It's a more competitive environment. Um, But in MMA, in terms of RPMs, it's not too bad, and I'm happy to be like transparent about that stuff because I think it's important. You know, we
oh
are
yeah,
creators. I
100%.
think we can be
That's what
transparent
our channel
about that
is.
sort of things. Yeah, exactly. Um, so for me, like on my most recent one, it's about £3.20 for 1,000 views on my long form videos, which isn't too bad. In
Nice.
December, it was paying way more. I think the most I've in terms of RPM from one video because it does tend to slow down. It tends to like the actual RPM per 1,000 views goes down because it changes all the time. It's not fixed. Um, Started around £5 something, which is pretty damn good. So it was and it was averaging about £4.50 in December per 1,000 views, which was very good. I can't lie.
Yeah,
That's
that is very good.
yeah, and that was and that was obviously the longer video should make. It's about watch time from viewers. So
I'm just,
however long they're staying on the videos.
This is just making me think when I go to so I'm buying a DJI Pocket, if you've heard of those.
No,
So
doesn't ring a bell.
DJI is essentially this brand. I'm not sure if it's gonna focus, but that's what my mics.
For me, it's pixely.
Yeah, that's what my mics are. It's a good brand of technology, but they have something called a DJI Pocket, which is essentially a sort of like a vlogging camera, quote unquote, but
Yeah,
very, very good quality. And it's just a tiny little stick. You've probably seen it. And it has a little head on an axis that can rotate. And you can film in portrait and landscape literally just with the flick of the screen, right? And it all goes into the SD card. So you don't have to have it on your phone. You don't have to anything like that. Just go straight onto the SD and then you can edit from that. So I'm going to buy one of those just so that my content creation is as frictionless as possible when I go away and everything's on an SD card. And then when I go out to Thailand, I am ready. I am not exaggerating.
prepared.
I am ready to dominate the content game of MMA and slash Thai traveling slash MMA Thailand because they all cross over dramatically. There are so many people creating content around Southeast Asia at the moment. There's so many people creating content around MMA. There's so many people, all of these different things. I'm ready to dominate that space indefinitely. And I am so ready to churn out so many good food videos. I cannot even express.
That's what I'm looking forward to. I feel about them. I don't know if I can watch them because they're just going to make me really hungry. Like right now, I don't even want to think about it because I'm hungry. And I'm thinking of Thai food and it's pissing me off because it's making me want to eat Thai food.
I'm going to try and put out a good quality 14 videos a day, like a good quality. And I believe I can definitely do that. Yeah. I believe I can definitely do that when I'm out there.
If you do.
Yeah. I genuinely believe I will do.
Very forward to it. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up, to be honest. I think we've covered a lot of bases today. And we got, obviously, the fight night coming up next week. We don't really give a shit about it too much. Some interesting fights on there. But 298, we will be getting on. And, of course, on Wednesday, we are recording the guest episode, which has been in the works for a while. That is going to be very fun. So that should be out midweek as well. So with Gio Toralba.
It's actually
if you
on Thursday,
are news,
I believe we're filming it.
No, Wednesday, mate.
You said the 8th.
No, I said the 7th.
Okay, it doesn't matter to me.
This is bad. Everyone listening is like, nah, these guys are not coordinated. I'm pretty sure I said the 7th, and I'm fairly sure it is the 7th. But that'll be fun. Should be out midweek. Stay tuned for that. This has been the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 37. I think we're on now. We stopped counting. And we will see you next Sunday. Cheers.